Hi everybody, Kirsten here, and I thought it is about time that I bring back my most popular videos, and that is a Smutty Rec Sunday. I have been reading a lot more lately. I have found a little bit more time here and there. Basically, I'm not sleeping as much, so I can get some reading done. I've been reading a lot more romance novels lately. I was really into a fantasy kick for a little while, and I was reading a lot of fantasy and a lot of YA fantasy. And I was like, I need a break from those knowledge-heavy books. And I was like, I might as well just go ahead and read some romance, and then it turned into like this chain reaction where I was like, oh, I'm going to read every book in this series, and I'm going to read every book in this series, and oh my gosh, Lisa Raven has a new book out. Oh my god, I need to read it right now. So there was just like a whole bunch of books that I've read lately, and I think there's about 10 that I've read in the past 2 weeks. And I'm not going to talk about every single one of them because that'd be a little too much information for one video. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about my favorites that I've read, and then hopefully you guys can find some books in this little bunch that you can pick up and get your little smut fix, and just like I had to. So let's go ahead and get started with this third edition of my Smutty Rec Sunday. So the first book that I want to talk about is the newest release by Lisa Raven. It's called Mr. Romance, and this book is really hilarious. Where her first series, the Bad Romeo books or the Star-Crossed series, those were kind of heavier content. I cried when I read those books. I loved that kind of like darker new adult feel, but she took this kind of to a different place, and it was very fluffy and it was very funny. And I couldn't stop laughing the entire time, and even just the premise of the book is comical itself. It's about an escort whose pseudonym is Mr. Romance, because his two initials spell MR. And so these rich societal women, they call on to him to get these romance novel fantasies played out to kind of keep their marriages in check. And our main character is a journalist, and she's like, who is this guy? Why is he swindling these women out of so much money? And so he kind of cons her into dating him, and they fall in love, and it's really cute. It was so satisfying to read this book. It just overall was an amazing book. Everything that I'd want in a smutty romance, this book has. So definitely pick up Mr. Romance by Lisa Raven. It is A+. It's my favorite romance novel I've read this year so far. So I'm actually going to talk about Alice Clayton a little bit here. So I've talked about Wallbanger, which is the first book in her cocktail series, a couple of times in a few past videos. Well, I decided that I wanted some more funny romance reads after reading Mr. Romance, and I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and pick up Alice Clayton's other cocktail books. Normally I don't read a series if I won't read the full series if the following installments follow the same couple. Well, out of the 5 books in the cocktail series, 2 of the books in the series, My Tied Up and Screwdrivered, follow different main characters, different protagonists. So I went ahead and picked those 2 books up, and just like Wallbanger, they were absolutely hilarious. And the thing that I like about the cocktail series that she does is the entire book is the chase. Like, that's one of my favorite parts of romance novels, is them kind of figuring out how they're going to get together, and then once they do kind of get together, I kind of skim the rest of the book, just because I love that angst, that back and forth of the romance novel, that kind of pull, that sexual tension that you get with the main characters. So that's what I loved about the cocktail series, is each of those books, they don't get together until like the end of the book. So that entire book is that angsty chase, and then I just absolutely love it. And Screwdriver was my favorite of the 2, just because the male protagonist was a hot librarian, and why would I not absolutely love that? How could I not? And then her second series, I actually just devoured and finished the 3rd book in the series, and it's the Hudson Valley series. These covers crack me up. In true Alice Clayton fashion, they're romantic comedies. It all revolves around this small town in the Hudson Valley. So the first book in the series is called Nuts, and it's It follows a personal chef who moves back home to the Hudson Valley to take over her mother's diner while her mother's off on the Amazing Race. And while she's there, she runs into a local farmer, and while he's delivering a batch of nuts to the diner, and just like the way that they meet is hilarious, and their entire interaction throughout the entire book, like she's a mess. And it's fantastic, and I love how they interact and how he's just so put together, and she's just a mess all the time. And she bakes a lot, which of course I love. Second book is called Cream of the Crop, and while our first main character, she's a personal chef, one of her best friends that lives in the city, she actually works in advertising, and she gets stuck into the Hudson Valley by working with the town to kind of drum up tourism, and in the process she kind of falls for the dairy farmer that is in the town, and he's just very like stoic, and he's a man of few words, and it's really funny reading kind of the banter between a woman that talks a mile a minute all the time and then a man that like does not say anything, and just kind of how the confusion that's kind of there. It just kind of had me laughing the whole time. I absolutely loved it. The third book in the series, just in fashion with the rest of the covers, which they're hilarious on their own. That book is The Fox and the Hound by R.S. Gray. So this book just recently came out on the 1st of June. So I just love her books so much. I've read them all. If you have Kindle Unlimited, all of the books are available in the Kindle Unlimited store. If you want like just a good summer author to follow, she is the one to do that with. I know that I talked about Anything You Can Do when it came out a while back, and this kind of follows in that same arena, but I loved this book so much more than I loved Anything You Can Do. I think this is my favorite of all of her books. It's just extremely hilarious, the banter back and forth. This also revolves around animals, so if you're an animal lover and you love dogs, definitely read this book, just because it does follow a vet and a woman who accidentally adopts a giant mountain dog and has no idea that she adopted this giant dog because it's like a puppy when she gets it. And so it's just a lot of them kind of training this dog together, and then it kind of revolves around the dog. And so it's fantastic. I loved it. I absolutely did. I read it in a couple of hours because I couldn't put it down. Another book that I want to talk about, I've talked about Kylie Scott's books in the past. She has the Stage Dive, I think the Stage Dive series, and those follow rock stars. Well, she wrote a secondary spin-off series of that called the Dive Bar novels, and those books follow one of the opening bands for Stage Dive. He comes back home to Coeur d'Alene, which is actually like 20 minutes away from me, so I think whenever I read these books, I'm like, oh my god, they're talking about where I live, because they talk about Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, and I'm like, oh my god. Anyways, so the second book in that series recently came out, and it is called Twist, and I just really love these books. I remember the first Kylie Scott book that I read, I hated the first Stage Dive novel. I did. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was awful. And then as I was reading the rest of the books, I was like, oh my god, these books are great, because each one got better. And she's one of those authors that, you know, each one of her books is better than the one before it. Like, she's definitely learning and growing every single time she writes a book. And these books are great. I love the Dive Bar books. So this book actually, I don't know if anyone else watches Catfish. I obsessively watch Catfish. My husband and I both do. We love it. Like, we watch it all the time. Well, the premise of this book is being catfished. Like, this woman thinks that she's talking to this guy, Eric, who works in the bar, and she comes down to surprise him for his birthday, and he's like, I have no idea who you are. I don't know who you are. And then she gets really embarrassed and starts storming off, and comes to find out that the man that she's actually been talking to is his brother, Joe. And he's just like this burly, big mountain lumberjack man who's a carpenter, and I'm here for it. And so she ends up getting super sick and stuck in Coeur d'Alene, and can't go back home, and he takes care of her, and then love blossoms, whatever. But God, I love this book. I do. Not only because it's very local to where I am, but what is there not to love about a male protagonist that is super lumberjacky? Like, I'm totally into that aesthetic with men. Like, yes, give me a man that can cut down a tree and make a desk out of it for me. Like, like good going, Kylie Scott. I love this one. I loved Joe. He was a great love interest for this book. The last book that I wanted to talk about today is actually a memoir, which I was super surprised about. I didn't know it was a memoir when I purchased it. And it's called 44 Chapters About 4 Men, and it's by B.B. Easton. And this book I was kind of on the fence about, because the stories start when she's a teenager, and it's very, very heavy-handed on the smut. And so I was like, well, she's kind of reminiscing, so I can understand why she's talking about her sexual exploits when she's a teenager. But it does have that in it, so keep that in mind when you're going to go read this book. She saw that her husband was getting in his journal and reading about all these things that she did when she was a teenager. And when he's reading these excerpts, he starts doing things differently with her at home, kind of like actually like paying attention to her and doing all these things that she actually wants him to do around the house, because he's reading that she wants these things. And I guess it was more effective for him to see them than it was for him to hear them. So she decides, when she realizes that he's doing this, she writes an actual secret journal where she's writing everything that actually happened. And then she's manipulating these journal entries that he can read to kind of get him to do a couple of things for her. And they're silly things like compliment her, get a tattoo memorializing their love, just things like that, just like silly things. And so she's writing these actual events that happened to her, and then she's writing these fantasy versions to make him think that like she had like these amazing relationships before him, when actually she didn't. Writing these emails to her friend in between these journal entries, so you can kind of see what's going on, how her husband's reacting to them, how she's reacting to writing them. And I absolutely enjoyed it. I thought it was hilarious. Such a different take on my normal smutty reads, so I thought it was such a fun kind of change of pace. But everybody, I just rambled on for a really long time. Those are all of my favorite smutty reads that I've read recently. Definitely pick those books up if you haven't read them yet. I'm going to go ahead and link them all below. And I guess this is just going to be my summer of funny, fluffy, smutty reads, because that's all I've been reading lately. But everybody, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your week.